But there was a time a few years ago when I pulled my team, and 50% of our team was non-STEM, right? Like non-traditionally educated. And one was a woman we hired who previously was a barista, and went through a coding boot camp and came in with so much potential, and she's exceeded even the potential that we thought she had, right? She's been phenomenal. And it's just been awesome to sit back and watch that growth. And you look at it and you're like, no amount of traditional like interview would have captured that. Yet she's been a phenomenal part of the team and a huge impact to the team.
Right. And what's funny, so here again, I'll say a few funny things. We had many acquisition offers over the many years. And in 2011, both Google and Facebook tried to buy Extreme Labs. And went in picking the engineers to go interview, because they're like, hey, pick 5 engineers and we want to interview them. I couldn't pick these non-traditional folks. I had to find people who had the software engineering degree, because that's how Google interviews. Even though my top engineers might not fit into that. Well, it was super strange, but I'm like, here are the people I have to choose because that's going to fit the mold. I mean, it's funny, but that's the traditional model.
Yep. No, I get it. And that's one of the reasons why we've never made, a college degree a requirement, right? Like that, it's a nice to have on there, but like that's never been it. In some positions, we want more computer science experience. Some positions we don't. That's awesome. So have you, are there any instances where you can say like, you pointed out one where it worked really well, right? Where there was someone who, after 60 days turned it on, and then it was going to be your first hire. Is there like an instance where it didn't pan out or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it turns out that if you do a deep dive that into real work, you're basically going to figure this out in 90 days instead of a year. Like that's my heuristic argument, was that you'll just figure out in 90 days what would have taken you a year, because you like, think about the sunk cost, right? If you put in 3 to 5 hours in interviews, you're not going to let somebody go in 3 months, because you're like, all the time we spend, and look at all the, look at our hiring funnel, and it takes us like 40 hours in aggregate to hire a person. But for us, we only had 15 minutes of data. So we were looking at, we didn't have a sunk cost. And when they come in, of course, you're training somebody up, you're pair programming, but we exited, I would say 10 to 15% of the people in like the first 3 months. But our attrition rate after 3 months was extremely low, because people knew they were a fit and they wanted to be in that high learning environment. So it was a little bit of a trade-off. So it's more about, yes, we had much more attrition in the first 90 days, but it became also part of our culture. Like when it was identified that somebody wasn't a fit, either from their side or our side, and they left, the attitude of the company would be raised, because we're like, okay, the people who are fit are still here, and the people who are not here. And that's good for everybody.
And making it explicit probably helped with that, right? Which is, everyone knew this is not a surprise. It was nothing, like it was upfront and out in the open with everyone.
Right. And so actually you're hitting on a very important point. When I would sit down with people and say, hey, look, it's not working out, they would say, I'm not happy, but I'm not surprised. They knew they were getting feedback the whole time. It was explicit from the beginning of how the company works. And so when they rolled out, everybody knew it was a good thing for them and us. And here's the best part. Many times they would say, I'm going to refer my friends. Like they're like, it was a great experience to go through. They learned something, and then they go on and hopefully find something that's a better fit for them.
That's awesome. And so have you been able to carry that through to now, like to other places? I mean, obviously you were one of the founders at help.com, right?
Yeah. So at Extreme Labs, I was early, but I wasn't the founder, but that's where, we came up with this approach. At Helpful, we did the exact same approach where, here's another funny example. I went to a coffee shop and I met a data science engineer. Didn't really look at the resume because I don't. And I just went for a 15-minute walk and we just talked, because I don't know anything about data science, like let alone even give them like a problem. We hired him. And after the first year at the Christmas party, he goes, just so you know, I don't know if you guys know, but this is my first software job. Like it was amazing. And he was amazing. He's at Shopify now. He came with us as part of the acquisition. So it's just amazing. We were like, what? He was a hardware engineer who was interested in data science. And what's funny is at the same time, we had hired a PhD in machine learning who teaches at the university. And he was not a fit. So resume to resume, you'd pick person A over B. But for what we needed in our company, person B was the right person. Awesome. And then how far has it taken? So at Shopify, we have a different approach, not dissimilar in like what it's trying to do. So one thing we do is we have a part of our interview process called the life story, where we try to dig into, it's nothing to do with technology. It's a a view into like, how do we find the most curious, interesting people we can find as like our first screening part of our process. We also don't care about your, like, if you've gone to university. I mean, our CEO, right, got into the workforce at 16. So it's a normal thing for us to think through. And we're constantly trying to figure out what are the right signals in order for us to figure out, can we find a better proxy for performance than these interviews. So we do still have an interview process. It's not that a whiteboard process. It is a pair programming and a technical deep dive, but it's much more tailored from a life story perspective to bring in as many diverse voices into the company to match the set of 1 million+ merchants that are just as diverse as the employees we have.